Hey everyone, hey everyone, hey everyone, Anthony Fantano here, internet's busiest music nerd. You know who it is, and it's time for another edition of Starter Pack, where I go over a series of records that I want to recommend to you to kind of get yourself started in a particular genre. In this particular episode, we are talking about cool jazz. Cool jazz is a softer, more easygoing style of jazz music, sort of born out of sort of the swing era in response to that very wild, very boisterous, very exuberant style of music, to sort of explore the swing rhythms of the music, the improvisations of jazz music, but sort of with a softer, more subtle, more dynamic approach. And we're just going to go over 5 albums in no particular sort of order that I think you should get into, that I think you should check out if you want to kind of get acquainted with this style of music. Do keep in mind that this is, not nearly as aggressive or as hard-hitting or as in your face as, like I just said, swing or Dixieland or bop, post-bop, bebop, all that stuff. Jazz funk and jazz fusion that would come later down the road. This is a very cool, chilled out, very laid back style of jazz music, but still not to be sort of confused with a lot of the new age styles of jazz or smooth jazz or something like that. It's not smooth jazz. That's not what cool jazz is. Cool jazz came way before smooth jazz was even an idea in anyone's head. Cool jazz, much earlier. We're talking, 50s over here. All right, so let's get into it. First recommendation I want to make to you guys, Dave Brubeck's Time Out, which is not really just simply a cool jazz album that I would recommend if you were trying to get into cool jazz. I mean, it's an album that I would recommend to anybody trying to get into jazz, period. I mean, there are some amazing and fantastic compositions on this record because Dave Brubeck, before he got into the jazz scene, he was an accomplished and a fantastic composer and piano player already, and he sort of took a lot of his classical training and a lot of his virtuosity on the piano and applied it to jazz in a fantastic way, which is exactly why you have such unique moments on this record like Blue Rondo a la Turk, as well as, the legendary Take 5, which is, that amazing jazz track that is in 5 timing, but still manages, to get that swing rhythm in there. It's a very, I guess, regal album. It's a very classy album. It's not quite as freewheeling or as, unpredictable as sometimes jazz albums can get, with their emphasis on improvisation, which is not necessarily working against this album. It's part of why I think this is a good starter record for anybody trying to get into jazz, because it's so easy to kind of follow it without getting lost in the instrumentation and the changes and the soloing. People aren't used to listening to jazz and who aren't used to sort of following a jazz performance, can get sort of lost in the sort of hecticness of, sort of the live performance. And this is definitely an easy album to sort of follow along with, keep track of, and, really just enjoy beginning to end without having to kind of rack your brain as to why, who is doing what and when, and so on and so forth. John Coltrane, Ballads, easily one of John's smoothest and, easiest albums to listen to, but still, in its own regard, a very beautiful record. Not a whole lot to say about this album other than that, it's just a very classy, straightforward, enjoyable record all around. Definitely highly recommended by yours truly. We have Bill Evans' trio, Portrait in Jazz. This, to me, was a record that I had to familiarize myself in preparation for this list, and I enjoyed it. I enjoyed listening to it quite a bit, enough to actually recommend it in this video. A lot like the Dave Brubeck record, it is, very regal. It is very steady. It is very, clean cut. I guess is another sort of phrase that I would use to describe it. But there are some kind of very explorative moments on the album. To think of the word portrait being applied to the music on this album. There are a lot of very pensive tracks on this record. There are a lot of very thoughtful tracks and introspective tracks on this record. It is a very moody album, you know what I mean? And cool jazz typically does have kind of a moody feel, although there are cool jazz records out there that do have a very steady and a very straightforward groove to them. But I would say, the moodiness of this album is really, really, really tangible. It's unignorable, actually. So go into this, not looking for the most upbeat of listens, but still very beautiful, still very well put together. Of course, I have to give a shout out to Miles Davis' Kind of Blue. If you enjoy this and you want to go on to listen to his Birth of the Cool compilation, please, which also makes so much sense. Cool jazz originators like Jerry Mulligan also appear on that album. But this record is kind of the giant album from Miles Davis, like one of his biggest records of all time. And it's not hard to see why. It's so fantastically performed. It's so, I don't know, just the subtlety and the soft approach of the instrumentation in the background makes every single solo performance on this album pop all that much more, which is actually, in my opinion, one of the many appeals of cool jazz, that, the backing band really kind of steps back and lets the solos shine all that much more. I feel like with, a lot of more aggressive jazz music, it's kind of easy to get lost in how aggressive some of the backing instrumentation is playing, get lost in the groove, not pay full attention to what the solos are doing. In cool jazz, they're really kind of spotlighted. They're spotlighted in a beautiful and intimate way. And, that's exemplified so much on this record over here, and it's fantastic because you have so many good players on this thing. You have John Coltrane on this. You have Cannonball Adderley on this thing. Excuse me, it's late and I'm slurring my words. But all around very good album. One of Miles' best, and one of the records that, long players along with Birth of Cool that kind of put the style and put the sound on the map. And Soulville by Ben Webster, which is an album that I'm more recently familiar with, an album that I listened to thanks to the good people over at Vinyl Me Please when they were sort of sending out copies of this. A lot like the title reads, it's a very soulful record. If you could sort of pull together, a fusion of jazz, but with melodies and with solos that seem to be more influenced by soul music, this would be it. A lot like Birth of the Cool, very smooth, very easygoing, very chill, very laid back, very pretty. Not quite as, what's the word I'm looking for? I guess there's a vibe on Kind of Blue that's almost like meditative. I wouldn't say that carries over onto this album over here, but it's still a very light, easygoing, enjoyable listen. And, again, obviously the aggression is not there. It's all about the sweetness and the, wonderful kind of still timbre of the instrumentation. It's all about kind of the swing and the groove of the band, but, with a very light touch. And, so I would definitely recommend this. Definitely recommend Kind of Blue, Portrait in Jazz, Ballads, Take 5. And, again, if you listen to that, Miles, and you really do enjoy Kind of Blue, do check out Birth of the Cool as well. And that is it, and obviously this is, I just said obviously twice. Obviously this is, for the third time, just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to cool jazz. But if you are interested in the genre, you are looking to get started in sort of the genre and get familiar with the genre, these are the records that you would definitely kind of start with. These are the records that you would sort of dip your toes in. This should sort of get you on the right track, for the sound, for the style. And once you do listen to some other records, you'll have more of a kind of bearing as to where you are and who's doing what, because, the thing is, it's not like every single one of these albums approaches cool jazz in a single defined way, and there are even tracks on this Dave Brubeck album, for example, that I wouldn't even think qualify fully as cool jazz, that are a little bit more peppy, that are a little bit more, aggressive. So do keep in mind that a lot of artists over the years have dabbled in cool jazz, but have not made albums that from front to back are entirely cool jazz, and have all kind of put their own unique spin on it, but I guess do keep in mind that, these albums are a part of a moment of an era in the jazz movement where everybody sort of saw this need and this desire to kind of pull back, a little bit. And these are the songs, these are the albums, these are the artists that kind of, indulged and the word I'm looking for is, kind of entertained that idea, and some beautiful art came out of it. So give this thing a listen. Hope you guys give these albums a listen, rather. Hope you enjoy them. Hope you got something out of these recommendations. And over here next to my head is another starter pack video. I'll keep these things coming and plan for the next one as soon as I can. You guys are the best. Forever. Bye.